Hello and welcome to your weekly energy report for the week of February 8th through 14th, 2021. We are in extreme Aquarian energy, which is actually a nice vibration. However, as always, we do have some hiccups and creases to iron out. And they come in the form of what's taking place literally as I record this, which is that we have Venus sextiling Saturn, which is essentially all about a reassessment of our relationships, particularly friendships, as it's in Aquarius. And it's not so much about the purging energy that we may have felt in the Saturn Capricorn energies. This is more, it's like a fine-tuning. It's about understanding beyond reevaluation how to constructively and in a sort of communal way find healthier paths forward in our behaviors, in our interaction, our communication, interaction skills, our psychological awareness of others, and this is then heightened by the fact that during the week we have Mercury conjuncting the Sun. And Mercury conjunct the Sun is all about a new Mercury cycle. It's what defines a brand new Mercury cycle. And that is about intentionality in our communication. It is about having a fresh start to how we choose to frame our delivery, essentially. So that's pretty exciting stuff. And then of course we have a new moon in Aquarius later this week. So that'll be 6 planets and a new moon in Aquarius. So if we've been struggling to understand what the Aquarian age is all about, the energies of this next week are probably going to give us some clues. So, and maybe more than some clues. There is still a lot of personal tension that we're actually almost done with via Black Moon Lilith and her determined stance on working through fear and understanding what lack of reality there is in our fear. That's ultimately down to our individual psychology as to how we experience fear and where that comes from in our lives. But Black Moon Lilith does really bring a lot of this stuff up, and it's been quite some time that we've been feeling our earthly fears, and that's coming to pass. But as with everything, it's darkest right before the dawn, right? So you could be feeling some less than harmonious manifestations of projectile fear, wherever that may be in your life. It could be regarding the state of the world. It could be regarding the state of your relationships. It could be how you accept yourself and whether or not you can actually find peace and comfort in self-acceptance. That's a lot, but I'm gonna leave it at that for the astrology. I'm also going to try to keep this video a little bit shorter this week because we did have a lot to go through last week, a lot of purging energy. And I do sense that we've moved past that. I hope that you've had the opportunity to address those matters in your own life and find some sense of self-empowerment. And this does really come up in our reading this week, but I'm going to start with our Spirit Animal Oracle card of the week. Horse Spirit, freedom is yours, which I am taking to be more about an intentionality of freedom rather than an actual direct manifestation of it. I have to find the book, of course. Where did I put that? Excuse me for... As you can see, I'm filming this a little bit differently. I decided to blow up my medicine ball, and I am sitting on that. Why I'm telling you that, I have no idea. But anyway, I will look up Horse Spirit, which is number 33. And what does Horse Spirit tell us? When Horse Spirit appears, you are gifted with a spirit of movement and freedom. It is a time for travel and adventure, whether that means a trip somewhere or taking a different type of journey, one of freedom of choice. Horse Spirit reminds you that no matter the circumstances, you have free will and choice that can take you far away to a better place, a better situation, a better state of being, for there is no one but you to rein in your will to make a different decision. You are capable of making powerful choices that will affect you for a long time to come. Horses are social animals and known to be a friend to mankind, willing to carry us forward when we need it. Horse Spirit reminds you that help will be available to you whenever you need it, and companions will be by your side wherever you choose to go, whatever direction you choose to travel. Life is an adventure, and Horse Spirit wants you to know that whatever choices you make, you have great spirit within, invisible, yet holding you up and always walking by your side. If your inquiry is about a relationship, you can set your heart free to experience love in all forms. Spirit whispers to you that the gift of freedom is yours if you allow yourself to break out of your perfectionism and stubbornness. Make a move and enjoy the freedom of letting go of the need to control. Interesting. I'm not sure how we'll apply that. What did I do with my... Excuse me one moment. I know I put it somewhere. Oh. My beverage. What should we go with next? Okay, let's go with the Sacred Destiny card of the week. Flexibility. And I suppose in flexibility we find more of a sense of freedom. Again, I think what we are all learning is that freedom mostly comes down to personal choice. How we receive, how we give, what state of mind we attach ourselves to. Of course, we always have that choice to anchor ourselves in our own spirited empowerment rather than allowing our environmental complications to direct our journey forth. Oh, I opened this up to freedom too so I did not mean to do that. Let me look up flexibility. Okay. Flexibility is represented by the bamboo in the wind. The symbolism of bamboo runs deep. Whereas many larger, seemingly stronger trees will break in high winds, bamboo simply bends and sways. Its flexibility allows it to survive and even thrive while other species suffer. Even during a hard winter, when its branches are laden with snow, bamboo doesn't break. It snaps back when the snow melts in the spring. It also has a strong root system, so that even during great storms it survives. Additionally, it is often a symbol of abundance because of its rapid growth. Its upward, verdant, constant growth is used as a metaphor for the fulfilling rise of prosperity. The sacred landscape wants you to know that the meaning of this card is rich and varied. It cautions you to be flexible in your life, be willing to bend and yield. There are times to stand strong, but there are also times to go around a situation rather than face it head on. This card suggests being amenable to change. It is also a fantastic card for abundance and prosperity. And it suggests that if you are flexible, prosperity can and will come your way in all areas. Additionally, it suggests that a time of rapid growth is ahead. Don't resist it. The time is right for this surge of spiritual growth to occur. Well, there's just so many things to take into consideration in that, of course. Again, it really does come down to how we understand our experience of freedom, which of course is never an absolute, but, well, I guess it is in infinity outside of 3D, but we won't know about that. As long as we're in this terrestrial existence, we can only aspire, right? Now this week, I am borrowing a deck of cards called the Archetype cards because I wanted to incorporate them to see if they could translate into giving us a sense of the state of mind that we should embody in the week ahead. And we got 2 cards. The first was the Athlete. Interesting. The light attributes of an athlete are dedication to transcending physical limits, including handicaps, development of personal willpower, and strength of spirit. The shadow attributes are a misuse of athletic ability for selfish ends and a false sense of invulnerability and entitlement. I think we can go with the upright in this case. And if we're looking at it from the perspective of the ultimate expression of strength of spirit, represented by the power of the body, I think the message is clear that physical endurance and physical health are of the utmost importance to focus on when we find ourselves struggling with these sort of tempering energies in our relationships, in our communication techniques, because of course when we exert ourselves physically, and also when we practice something like yoga, breath work, and of course exercise in general, when we exert ourselves also forces us to be more aware of our breath. This in turn grounds us and brings us away from the swords in our head and roots us back into Gaia and the mothering energy, the nurturing, mothering energy, which is where we want to be. So there's one sense of embodiment that we have, and then we got the Child Eternal. Sorry, you can't see those so well because they're very glossy, these cards. The light attributes of the eternal child are determination to remain young in body, mind, and spirit, ability to see things with fresh eyes. And the shadow attributes, inability to grow up and be responsible, extreme dependency on others for physical security. Which is also a tricky balance and has a lot to do with freedom, right? Being in between those two states, the state of seeing things through young eyes, in other words, not being jaded by our experiences, but instead allowing them to simply give us the stamina to flow. And of course the shadow aspect being about dependency, and that can be on other people, but it can also be on substances, behaviors in general, It can be avoidance of responsibility. And it's really also about the empowerment of the divine feminine within us all, because we've been so conditioned to patriarchal thinking that we don't necessarily allow ourselves to feel empowered in our divine feminine. And of course, the Aquarian era age is really empowering all of those aspects of ourselves. It's giving us a sense of the divine feminine coming into an ease of expression, because the needs of our society, of our cultures, are changing very rapidly. So something to think about in terms of how we embody ourselves. Our physical stamina, grounding ourselves through breath work and our physical exertion, and finding that inner child, celebratory understanding that, you know, in the child there is wisdom too, you know, that overemphasis on maturity and wisdom can, you know, in the sense of the traditional sense of, you know, the aging into wisdom, don't always serve, because we then fail to see the value of innocence. You've probably noticed that I myself am feeling much more grounded right now, and I feel like the energy of the week ahead is going to be much more quiet from within, not around us. There will be chaos, believe me, but from within there's a quietening, and sorry, clearly I can't speak. So we'll look into that in this weekly reading from the tarot. I pulled a Celtic cross, so let's look at our underlying energy. Overall, we have the Knight of Cups. It's interesting that I've never really had a context for the horse in the Knight of Cups, but because we got horse spirit, something to focus on, to think about what a horse represents to us. And the idea from horse spirit cards that the horse is a friend of humankind and carries us forth. You know, this knight is carrying his emotional cup with intent, and he is carried by a very proud, docile looking horse. So this implies some form of harmony. We see the representation of the subconscious, and it's an easy flow, and the horse is willingly crossing that into whatever's on the other side. Who knows? That's the beauty. When we change our emotional perspective into something more receptive and more enthusiastic and more open, we have new experiences that can't be defined, which is probably why we don't see what's on the other side. And we do have an Osho card for the week, which is the 3 creativity. Number 3 would be the Empress. So let's read that. I'll hold the card up for you. From the alchemy of fire and water below to the divine light entering from above, The figure in this card is literally possessed by the creative force. Really, the experience of creativity is an entry into the mysterious. Technique, expertise, and knowledge are just tools. The key is to abandon oneself to the energy that fuels the birth of all things. This energy has no form or structure, yet all the forms and structures come out of it. It makes no difference what particular form your creativity takes. It can be painting, or singing, planting a garden, or making a meal. The important thing is to be open to what wants to be expressed through you. Remember that we don't possess our creations. They do not belong to us. True creativity arises from a union with the divine, with the mystical and the unknowable. Then it is both a joy for the creator and a blessing for others. Creativity is the quality that you bring to the activity that you are doing. It is an attitude, an inner approach, how you look at things. Not everybody can be a painter, and there is also no need. If everybody is a painter, the world would be very ugly. It would be difficult to live. And not everyone could be a dancer, and there is no need for everybody can be creative in their own way. Whatsoever you do, if you do it joyfully, if you do it lovingly, if your act of doing is not purely economical, then it is creative. If you have something growing out of it within you, if it gives you growth, it is spiritual, it is creative, it is divine. You become more divine as you become more creative. All the religions of the world have said God is the creator. I don't know whether he is the creator or not, but one thing I know, the more creative you become, the more godly you become. When your creativity comes to a climax, when your whole body, your whole life becomes creative, you live in God. So he must be the creator because people who have been creative have been closest to him. Love what you do. Be meditative while you are doing it, whatsoever it is. Strong emphasis there on the idea of freedom in creativity and how we disconnect so much from that, right? It's very easy to fall out of the flow of creativity because we have our busy lives, we have our obligations, we have our thoughts, our fears, and all of these get in the way of us expressing what we came here to express, which is the authentic fullness of who we are, and embodying that for all to experience, all to see, whether it's appreciated or not. And I was reminded by a friend of mine recently, when I was beating myself up over my perceived lack of creativity, that I do this weekly reading, come rain or shine, and that it is in a way of a form of creativity too. So, and that's probably why it means so much to me, because when we do these, when we have a commitment to the creative flow, we experience godliness within us. And that's not always easy, because at the center of our reading we have the Two of Pentacles. Now, of course, the Two of Pentacles can be seen as a conscious intentionality towards balance. But of course, you know, one pentacle is up and the other is down, and it will shift again because the lack of balance always creates that. So it's probably specifically linked to the idea of creativity and the flow. You know, maybe we focus too much on our work and then we aren't focused on our creativity or our emotional emboldening, and or vice versa. You know, it can be that we're plagued with self-doubt about our, you know, the way that we function economically in our lives, and that becomes so all-encompassing that we don't actually see any possibility for creativity because we sort of block ourselves, right, in that process. So that's where we're at. And certainly I know that I can feel that, what we talked about astrologically about these reassessments of relationships and how we interact with other people, and knowing our own sense of responsibility in that, and how we have the power to create our outcome. That's been very present in my life in recent days, after a long bout of extreme frustration that continues within, but at least I've expressed myself in a way of setting intentionality. We do this so that we can allow our faith in new pathways to open up, so that can thrive. And of course, there's a void after we make that decision and we find ourselves in what feels like complexity, but is in fact nothing. It's literally nothing, because it's all thoughts. It's all mental strife and discomfort, and often self-created. Well, the good news is that what crosses it is the Six of Swords. So, the intention now is set to move away from that imbalance and to find more of a, again, we need to look at this. It's all about the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And of course, where they're moving away from is this quite turbulent emotional process. And over here we see that the waters are very smooth. So it is literally the embodiment of the shift towards calmer, vibrational flow. And we're being forced to understand that it is all about intentionality, that it's all about what we do with that energy. And sometimes, again, as with the Two of Swords, with the Two of Pentacles, it's about opportunities, because everything is an opportunity. If you're alive and you're doing anything at all, suffering or loving, it's an opportunity for learning, for growth, for movement of some sort that will take you to another place. And sometimes you have to drop one of these pentacles and just focus on one of them, and that opens up a lot more space for creative flow, right? In our past, we have the Page of Wands. Now, I do remember specifically in January when this came up as our outcome, our future energy. And so I think the Page of Wands really, in this context, is about a state of mind of that remaining teachable, finding inspiration in the acceptance and the surrender to possibilities, to really the youthful mindset, remembering the Child Eternal card. That youthful mindset is what allows us into a place of inspiration. And so this is what has allowed us to plow through these more problematic relationships. I know for me, for example, and I know this is quite universal, based on the astrological energies of recent times, there's been a real difficulty in speaking up for ourselves. We sit in this poverty consciousness by conditioning, where we are afraid of the consequences of placing our boundaries clearly, succinctly for others to experience, because we're afraid of a loss. But we're afraid of a loss of something that isn't there, because if we lose it, of course, it really does mean that it wasn't there. You know, that's just physics, essentially, you know. And we hold on to a lot of illusions, and we've worked hard to let go of a lot of illusions, but sometimes when you let go of a lot of illusions, the few that remain, you kind of have to hold on to, right? Because it's too scary, you know, which is where this flexibility card comes in, you know. In any case, the open mindset that we embraced through the Page of Wands energy sort of put enough pep in our stride that we found ourselves with this as the basis of our reading. The sun is that knowledge that we shine from within, and that whatever is within we will subsequently experience in our projected reality. And so much of that is about coming out of isolation. In fact, both of those cards really, to me, instinctively express that shift that seems to have been difficult for us, perhaps because of societal conditioning as a result of all that we've experienced over the last year. The fear and that has kept us anchored in a lifelessness, focusing only on the inner life, the inner process. And this Page of Wands and Sun energy have kind of pushed us to externalize our process into understanding that there's so much more for us to experience, and that we have to, while staying present in the moment, we also have to be able to have a sense of the possibilities. And the possibilities are ultimately about communion and about reigniting our passion for human connectedness. Because this is what we have in our near future energy. We have the Three of Cups. And the Three of Cups is really well, think about the depiction. You know, we look at it as celebratory. Of course it is celebratory. But what are these pagan celebrations representing? They're holding their cups up to the sky. So they're in total acceptance of their emotional worth. And they offer it externally, which is kind of what we now are on the verge of doing. And this major Aquarian energy, the Aquarian stellium, is like really going to push that forth. And I think this new moon in Aquarius is really about setting that intentionality. Towards community, towards a vision of community, towards a vision of seeing where we fit in, you know, where we're going to thrive. And it might not be accessible to you immediately in your physical existence, but the seeds are being planted. There is a new concept, a new vision on the horizon. Crowning our reading, we have the Ace of Pentacles. And the Ace of Pentacles is, of course, you know, the material realm It's a sense of opportunity, but it's an opportunity of growth. And it's important for us to understand that, because it's hard when we do readings, spiritual readings, these pentacles come along and, you know, they can almost render our, you know, we tend to separate the material from the spiritual. So it can be difficult to reconcile them in a reading. And so it's important that we understand what the material realm represents to us in the tarot. And it is our physical experiences of, you know, the alchemy of the other elements. So, you know, this is earth, but, you know, earth exists and thrives with water, emotions, with air, oxygen, swords, with vibrational inspiration, wands, you know. So nothing exists independent. You don't just have a material existence, but it is the portal of all those elements coming together to create a reality. So that's why we call it a manifestation of an opportunity in the Ace of Pentacles. And it is a divine gift. And I took a clarifier on it just to make sure that what I was feeling intuitively was real, was actually what it was. And we got the King of Pentacles. So this, I personally think it's about ownership of that King of Pentacles within ourselves. It's no longer being in poverty consciousness. The King of Pentacles is the absolute opposite of poverty consciousness. Depending on where we're at in our lives, it can also be that we have a figure of, you know, an authority figure or a hierarchical figure who represents power, wealth, all of these physical manifestations of what we consider success. And power and wealth, of course, are not necessarily, you know, we're not talking about political animals or corporate animals. We're talking about however you perceive power and strength and wealth. But, you know, obviously that's I mean, to me personally, that has to have a spiritual connotation. So it's when we feel so anchored in our earthly experience that, you know, we are the conduit, so above, so below. You know, this is exactly what that is. And I think I'm not expressing it well, but I think you probably understand it intuitively too, that it's important in this Aquarian energy to have a greater understanding of what pentacles represent in our readings, because they are not limited to the idea of money or fame or material acquisition. They're about being a master of earth energy, in the case of the King of Wands and the Ace of Pentacles, that he holds. So it's actually it's receiving the divine gift and owning it, well, managing it, that's what it is. It's managing it. You know, as the Osho Zen Tarot told us, we are not the owner of our talent, we are the manager of our talent. So this is the message. It's manage our talents. We are ready to manage our talents. This is going to manifest where we embody the fullness of our potential in the material realm, in the earthly realm. We get there eventually, right? But in order to get there, we have to go through some difficulties. And in our present, we do have how we are represented in our present. We have the Eight of Cups. So it's about letting go of the things that get in the way of us being in that pentacle mastery. And of course, what is it that we need to let go of? All these mental swords, these mental hurdles, these mental scars, these things that we always remain attached to, where we think that we know the outcome based upon fear, anxiety, projection. Fear of unknown consequences. And of course, the more we stay in that vibration of fear, the more likely it is that the outcome we fear will manifest, not because of some magical process that we're just fucked by the universe, but because we create that. You know, we are co-creators with spirit, so therefore if we're going to focus just on like anger and just on disharmony and just on loss and just on pain, of course we're going to experience that. That is, well, I mean, it's just, how can you not, you know? But we have to choose consciously to move away from that limitation. And that, again, is what we're doing. I mean, that's really, in a lot of ways, these two cards being our present in the external world, and these two cards being our inner process at the center of our reading, are the same thing, because, you know, the Six of Swords is moving away to calmer waters. The Eight of Cups is moving away from this emotional baggage and understanding that the emotional fulfillment or illusion of fulfillment that we've had thus far actually isn't enough for us, and that we need to let go of our attachment to these cups in order to move forward into something new. And, you know, and the Two of Pentacles and the Nine of Swords, you know, this is a juggling uncertainty, and this is the projection of that from the mind. What it does to us when we feel uncertain, when we try to calculate every scenario, when we try to calculate the outcome. I mean, if we're that controlling of our experience, then the focus on that is going to ultimately correspond to well, I don't need to go any further into any of that. I was distracted by the dog barking, but I think I said enough. I think you understood what I meant. How we are perceived in our environment, we get the Hermit. It's also how we affect our environment. So, piecing all of these things together, piecing this process, which I'm feeling there's been a lot of discomfort on this journey. There's been a lot of discomfort as we've moved, you know, despite the fact that we had the lightness of the Page of Wands and the Sun carrying us through. There's this underlying sense that this energy and this energy have been very, very prevalent and have really been conditioning and coloring all of our experiences, and the way that if we look back on our memories of recent times, perhaps not so recent times, you know, there's so much strife attached to them. There's so much uncertain uncertainty. There's so much discomfort in this. But of course, we become wiser as a result of our experiences. We become wise enough to understand that we need to still embody the eternal child. And that in turn eventually translates into other people seeing us for our worth and appreciating us. Not perhaps for the specific journey that we've been on, because most people aren't capable of understanding our inner process. Certainly not how we've experienced that emotionally, because we can only convey that through limited words, and through projection of comparison. When we get into this hermit energy, there's an inner knowingness that shines from within and that translates into a type of the sensation I get is stepping outside of the egoic expression of self into something that doesn't really have a verbal definition. Again, I suppose it is carrying that light from within and that being acknowledged and recognized by the people that we encounter, without us having to put firm boundaries in place. Now, the problem with the hermit is also that it means that we tend to withdraw, and I see in our psychology card that we have the 9 of Wands, which we've been seeing a lot of recently, in all honesty, and it's understandable. This is where flexibility comes in again, and that understanding that freedom is yours for the taking if you allow it to move beyond prescribed standards and learned perceptions of freedom, these limitations. The 9 of Wands really is being in a battle with our own ideas about things. It's when the ideas become so heavy and so burdensome that we're no longer inspired by our ideas, but instead we are caved in by them. That's not the right word. I tell you, I don't know what happened to me today. I think it was because I was in the sun for a while, and I think it killed some brain cells temporarily. But caged in, that's what I meant to say. See? It's like I might be having a stroke on camera for all I know. It's not that. It's because I've had some irritation in my environment today that I had to confront, and that is the embodiment of a lot of this energy. It's probably why I'm telling you about this now, but in a roundabout way, I've been afraid to speak my boundaries in my home environment, where there has been a certain amount of arrogance on display that is probably mindless and unconscious, but it has been unbearable to deal with, and it's very triggering for me. And I have been in this energy rather than being in this energy, King of Pentacles energy. So I can see where this is going. I see how we're going to evolve into that ownership of understanding that, you speak your mind, put your boundaries in place, and you move on. And if the person doesn't respect them, you do it again, just more firmly. And you don't worry about the consequences of not being liked or whatever, because if the person doesn't respect you, it doesn't really matter anyway, does it? And there's always change. You can always break free of any kind of contract or any kind of perceived prison of the mind. And this is just a continuation of that. So we need to get inspired, and the way we get inspired is by being a social entity, and of course I understand that for many people that's not possible given these circumstances, not in the traditional sense of everybody getting together and like partying or whatever, but it's about, you know, maybe after being in a very insular period in our lives, finally finding that joy in the connections that we have with other people and being really mindful of the value of those and investing in them in new ways that elevate our outcome. The beautiful 10 of Pentacles, the legacy card. This is literally when we are on the path to fulfilling our destiny. Again, we've been given the divine pentacle. We're going to embody it through the King of Pentacles energy, and the outcome of that is the 10 of Pentacles, which is a completion of a cycle. A fulfillment obviously requires then expanding. We go back to the Ace of Cups again after that. But this really contains itself in a certain way, and the message of our outcome as a clarification is to friendliness. Again, strong focus on the relationship dynamic that may be missing from our lives, and understanding just how much that union and communion are important to our ability to thrive and evolve and grow and be the magical beings that we are. So this is the Two of Cups, friendliness, and I will read from the Osho Zen deck, and then you will be done with me for the week. I really apologize for the fact that I've spent most of this reading looking over there instead of over there. I guess it doesn't really matter in the end, does it? But I'm acutely aware of it. It's a weird thing sometimes, the camera. Most of the time I try to just forget that it's even there, but it's hard because in order to make sure that it's filming, I always have the actual image projected back to me, so I see myself. And that's just not always... well, it's distracting, let's put it that way. Anyway, here we go. The branches of these two flowering trees are intertwined, and their fallen petals blend together on the ground in their beautiful colors. It is as if heaven and earth are bridged by love, but they stand individually, each rooted in the soil in their own connection with the earth. Again, the grounding energy is important. It is as if heaven and earth are bridged by love, but they stand individually, each rooted in the soil in their own connection with the earth. In this way, they represent the essence of true friends, mature, easy with each other, natural. There is no urgency about their connection, no neediness, no desire to change the other into something else. This card indicates a readiness to enter this quality of friendliness. In the passage, you may notice that you are no longer interested in all kinds of drama and romances that other people are engaged in. It is not a loss. It is the birth of a higher, more loving quality born of the fullness of experience. It is the birth of a love that is truly unconditional, without expectations or demands. First, meditate, be blissful, then much love will happen of its own accord. Then, being with others is beautiful, and being alone is also beautiful. Then it is simple, too. You don't depend on others, and you don't make others dependent on you. Then it is always a friendship, a friendliness. It never becomes a relationship, it is always a relatedness. You relate, but you don't create a marriage. Marriage is out of fear, relatedness is out of love. You relate. As long as things are moving beautifully, you share. And if you see that the moment has come to depart because your paths separate at this crossroad, you say goodbye with great gratitude for all that the other has been to you, for all the joys and all the pleasures and all the beautiful moments that you have shared with the other. With no misery, with no pain, you simply separate. The message of that card is not to encourage separation. On the contrary, it's to have a greater understanding of the value of connection and friendship and relatedness versus relationship. You know, humans have this horrible tendency to want to contain everything and define everything and limit everything. And it's to our own detriment, because we fail to reach the fulfillment that we have the potential to reach by allowing freedom, by moving beyond jealousy, possessiveness, projection, by understanding that in working on ourselves, we give ourselves the opportunity to better understand others. By loving ourselves, we give ourselves the opportunity to truly love others, not in a possessive way, not in a way that drives us to an egoic struggle, but instead in total freedom and flexibility. And I'd say the only way to do that is to be in the eternal child energy, and also to embody the athlete, because that is what grounds us in ourself and outside of the need to connect in a enchained devil energy way. That's our message for the week. It's a broad one, and it's certainly not as considering that we have this crowning energy in Pentacles and the outcome in Pentacles, the way that we get there is all emotional. Mental and emotional. So let's work on bridging those. I remember, oh God, I know, I'm going there again. I'm going to talk about Madonna briefly. But at the end of her Express Yourself video, which came out in 1989, which is now 32 years ago, there is a quote: "Without the heart, there can be no understanding between the hand and the mind." Namaste.